Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again, and today we're going to be talking about 10 fragrances that are designer that I think are 10 out of 10. So stay tuned for that. And if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. So I was actually tagged to do this video by Ja Resilient Prince. I will leave a link to his channel below. I do appreciate that tag. It took me a little while to think of this list because actually this was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. And I've decided to include fragrances that I knocked off the list because of other fragrances. So there's a few more than 10 in here. The list itself is actually 10, but I'm going to include some that I really considered including but didn't because I chose something else instead. So they are kind of in order, even though they're all 10 out of 10. I do have certain preferences, I guess, for certain ones more, depending on the season, depending on the mood. And the first fragrance I'm actually going to go with is Dark Rebel by John Varvatos. I actually really like this one. I'm glad I decided to give it a second chance because, as I mentioned in a previous video, I hated this one the first time I smelled it. I let it sit for several months, tried it again, and it is really a fantastic boozy leather tobacco fragrance. It's nice, it's strong, it's masculine. It has a little bit of that rugged edge that you would expect from something with the name Dark Rebel. The bottle also, I do like the presentation. Fairly simple, but the wire around does give it a nice touch. The only real complaint about this fragrance is that it doesn't perform that well. So it doesn't perform that great, but it is very cheap. I think I paid $25 for that, and I don't mind respraying that throughout the day. It's not really a problem, but it does last somewhere in that 4 to 6 hour range, 6 hours being at best. So it is a great, fantastic fragrance, especially in the colder weather. Really do enjoy this one, and that is going to be the first one on the list. The second one on the list is another one that I actually got fairly recently. I did try another one in the line, and it was more or less responsible for me liking or beginning to like vetiver fragrances more, and the one that I tried was Encre Noir Sport. Now I decided to get à l'extrême because I do like sport, and the price on this is very good. You can get a bottle of these for like $25, $35, something in that range. It's a cheap and expensive fragrance. Decided to give it a shot, and I like it more than sport. So it has that vetiver, it has everything the sport has, but it's more upfront, it's earthier, it's darker, without being too much, I find. So it's not too much, it's actually just a very well composed, earthy vetiver fragrance that does definitely play better in the fall and winter, maybe a little bit in the spring as well, especially if it's a bit of a cooler spring day. But it is exceptionally well composed designer fragrance that is a fantastic price. So the price point of this, as I mentioned, very inexpensive and a fantastic fragrance to add to the collection. Next on the list is actually one that's been talked about a lot in the community. It's one that I think for especially an older gentleman, in his 30s or above, someone in their 20s could probably pull this off too. Definitely works really well for. It's a fantastic, signature fragrance, and that is Zahara pour Homme. I do say this one is better for a little bit older gentleman because it does have a little bit of a mature and retro vibe, especially in the opening. One thing I found really interesting about this is fairly similar to the original composition, which they regenerated. And I think one of the reasons that the fragrance itself is not that dated is because it was ahead of its time in the sense that it did use oud. Oud definitely becoming a lot more popular now, and back in the day when the original was released, oud was essentially unheard of in Western fragrances. I think this was around the time of M7, which was really the first fragrance to do that. And so that makes it a little bit more modern and contemporary because it does have a really nice oud vibe, especially in the mid and the dry down. I do find it has a bit of this fougere barbershop vibe as well, and it is a really well composed fragrance. And ultimately, I do think this is a fantastically done fragrance. I do enjoy it a lot, and I think, like I said, it would be a great signature scent for someone in their 30s or above. Definitely has that gentlemanly, classy vibe, and it has a little bit of freshness about it, and definitely the modernity of having oud in it ahead of its time is something that I think makes it very wearable even today. So that is the 7th on the list, and I think that's a fantastic choice. Now, the next one was one that was actually bumped from the list, and a lot of people might be surprised because I've seen this on other people's lists. And you know, it is a fantastic fragrance. The thing is, I've worn a lot of it, and I think that's probably, you know, part of the reason. And that is none other than Bleu de Chanel Parfum. I do still really like this fragrance. I think it's a really well done, and it is really, you know, the godfather of the blue fragrance, or it's like really the forerunner of that with Bleu de Chanel. And the Parfum is my favorite one because it's smoother, has a little more depth, it's a little bit more full, and it's a little bit more mature. But like I said, I've worn this fragrance a lot. This is a 100 ml bottle, and you know, I've used about a third of it, which is a lot. So I've worn this a ton, and this is actually why these days I do prefer to buy 50 mils if I can, because I know I'm probably never going to run through 100 mil unless I decant some. But really nice, clean fragrance, very likable, very easy to wear, very inoffensive. And so I did decide to bump that one for something else that is similar in the slot that it would fit, but I just like it a little bit more right now. Now, this I will put also as a bit of a tie, and the reason is because if I didn't own a bottle of the one that I'm about to introduce, I might buy a bottle of the one that I have a sample of. So the fragrance in question is Acqua di Gio Profumo. Now, this one is worn a lot, and Acqua di Gio is probably the most sellingless men's fragrance of all time. Very well composed fragrance. It is really, really good even to this day. Profumo being a little bit more modern, a little bit worn, a little bit less. It does have the incense and the patchouli, which is really nice, and I do like it. And the reason that it bumped Bleu de Chanel is because to me those both fit that sort of daily wear vibe, something you can wear anytime and not have to worry about it. Inoffensive, office, versatile, any kind of time scent. And so right now I just kind of like Acqua di Gio Profumo a little bit more. Now that is tied with Acqua di Gio Profondo, and I really like this one because, you know, it's brighter, and it is a little bit more enjoyable in that sense. So I find, you know, with the incense, Profumo is a little bit darker, but they're also both very, very good. Now, if I didn't own Profumo, I might get Profondo, but for me, I'm not a full-on collector. I do like to have variety, I do like to have a collection, but I'm not going to say get the whole line of Acqua di Gio just for the sake of owning all of them. So in the future, when I run through this or get really tired of it, I might get Profondo instead, because I do also really enjoy that one. And it is newer, so it is the case that less people are going to be wearing it, which is also nice. It has the same mass appeal, it has the same DNA, and it's just something that is going to be a little less worn. So that is my 6th position, which is a tie. The next one, probably not going to get any surprises with this one because I talk about it all the time. I do really, really enjoy this one. And it is ultimately the fragrance that made me like leather fragrances, and that is Tom Ford Ombre Leather. Used to be a part of the private blend, and it was moved to the signature line. I'm very happy that he did that because I think it's a fantastic fragrance, and it did get, you know, cheaper in price because it was moved to the signature line. Very well done. It's like a softer, some people say it's a softer Tuscan leather, a little bit more wearable. And that's not completely unfair to say that. You know, it is more of a suede than a heavy leather. It does still have a bit of sweetness to it as well. And it just has this really, really nicely done leather note that I very, very much enjoy. So that is the 5th spot. Next on the list is another staple of mine for the winter, and that is none other than Spicebomb. As I mentioned in another video, I didn't actually like this fragrance that much when I first bought it. Wore it a couple times and I fell in love with it. So it starts off with this beautiful, really, really spicy accord with a little bit of sweetness in the background. So I really do enjoy this one. I also love the original. I think they're both really well done. I happen to own the Extreme, although I personally could own both of them, as I like them both pretty much about the same. But this is a fantastic fall and winter fragrance. It's great for cuddling up. It's great for wearing on dates. It's great for wearing in the colder weather. It's just, an absolute staple for those situations, and it is pretty easy to wear. I do find it very, very loud in the opening. First, 20 to 30 minutes. It's pretty crazy loud, very peppery on my skin, but it is a really fantastic fragrance, and I do love this one a lot. For me, an absolute staple. So that is the number 5, and we are now moving into the top 4. Now this next one, I don't have a bottle of it, but I really could have picked almost any one from this line. I think this is probably the best designer line of all time. In fact, I probably could have just included 10 fragrances from this line and called it a day, because they are really, there's just so many good ones from this line, and I really wish there would be something as good as this line in the future. And that, of course, is the Amen line. And the one that I picked is Pure Havane. So one of the reasons I don't have this is I do have Naxos, and it is a little bit more of a quality version. There's definitely the similarities there, but this is this beautiful honey tobacco, and it's absolutely fantastically done and performs exceptionally well. I do really like this one. It was really between this one or Pure Malt or Crypto Mint for me. Those are my top 3 favorites, although I do also enjoy Pure Leather quite a bit. And Pure Coffee is pretty good, although I wish the coffee note lasted a little bit longer. But in either case, Pure Havane, this is a fantastic honey tobacco type fragrance if you want to get that classy vibe too, because it does come off really well. Even for a designer fragrance, it does have a lot of quality to it, and so very much enjoy that one. The Amen line, legendary, probably the best designer line of all time, at least in my opinion, with the variety, with the quality, and with the innovation that was offered there. So absolutely love that one, and that is on my list. So next, we have another one that was actually bumped, and this is one that I really like for dates. I like it for the fall and winter. It's sweet, it has a beautiful orange note, and it has spices as well, and that is, of course, Wanted by Night by Zahara. Very well composed fragrance. It is pretty loud, and I think that's one of the reasons I chose the alternative over this one. So it is a little too loud at times, but it is a great performer and one that's really great for dates. And of course, very cool looking bottle on this one. But what I decided in favor of this one is Paco Rabanne 1 Million Prive. Now, I don't really like Paco Rabanne that much as a brand. I've always kind of considered him more for clubbing and that kind of stuff, which is not something that I'm particularly into. But there are some good fragrances from Paco Rabanne, I cannot deny that. Never been a fan of 1 Million, but I absolutely love 1 Million Prive. The main reason I don't actually own it is because it reminds me quite a bit of Owajan by Parfums de Marly, which I do have back here. So there is this fantastic honey and cinnamon note in this one. There is also tobacco, but I don't get a lot of that. But this is just absolutely fantastic, well blended, well put together, a really, really nice honey, cinnamon, tobacco fragrance from Paco Rabanne. And, it's definitely my favorite from the 1 Million line. My second favorite would be Lucky, which I do also think is pretty good. But this one is absolutely fantastic. So that is my number 3. For my number 2 spot, it needs absolutely no announcement, but that is none other than Dolce Gabbana, The One. I still love this one. I know it's older. I know some people may have moved on to other fragrances, but I still love this one. It's this beautiful amber and tobacco, and it has this very aromatic tobacco that's just, envelops you in this very, very pleasant aroma. And it is such a mass appealing fragrance that smells so good, and it's, a masterpiece, really. It is an absolute 10 out of 10. I still like this one. I like the EDP a lot more than the EDT. I actually find the EDP to be richer and deeper, and it just smells fantastic. So that's the one that I like the most out of the line. And I still wear this one on dates. I think it's perfect for that. That is exactly why I like it. But it's also fairly easy to wear in the fall. It's a very versatile fragrance. Definitely nice for going out. Performance, not the greatest, but I do find actually if you mix this one with some unscented lotion and then mix it around with a couple of squirts, put the lotion on, and then spray it on as normal, that it does get better sillage and longevity. So the performance is not terrible. I can get about 6+ hours from this, which is not the best, but it's absolutely not terrible. And usually for this type of fragrance, you know, you may or may not be going out longer than 6 hours, but it's also relatively inexpensive, so I don't mind respraying it. And like I said, it smells so good that I'm willing to respray it as well. So that is Dolce & Gabbana, the one EDP. The number one spot is actually a tie. Well, not quite a tie. One of them was bumped for one other fragrance because they're very similar but not, you know, the same. They have something similar in them that I both absolutely love. So the one that got bumped, Allure Homme Sport. This is not the Eau Extreme. I actually don't really like the Eau Extreme. I find something screechy and weird about it. It just does not work for me personally. But the Allure Homme Sport, and this was actually a classic pretty much as soon as it was released. As far as I remember, it was a very big hit from what I have heard as well. I love that sort of zesty orange that it has and that freshness with a little bit of muskiness that it really has going for it. And it just has this beautiful like peeled orange kind of a vibe that is absolutely fantastic. Now I may actually have picked something else over this one, but I do want to pick up a bottle of this one because it is just an easy to wear fragrance, versatile, and it smells fantastic. This one is an absolute 10 out of 10 for me, and I definitely prefer this one over the Eau Extreme. But what bumped this one is another one that I have talked about quite a bit, and that is Terre de Hermes Eau Très Fresh. This is my designer baby, I guess. It's my absolute 10 out of 10. If I had to pick just one designer, this would probably be it. Especially for spring and summer, it's just such an easy wear. It has that zesty orange in it, and that orange is a little bit more prominent than in the other iterations of Terre de Hermes, and it's not quite as heavy on the vetiver. So it does have a nice bit of vetiver, but that sits a little bit more in the background. It does provide a support to that absolutely wonderful bitter orange that it has going on for it. So this one is not talked about a lot in the community. I'm not entirely sure why. And Terre de Hermes in general is not hyped up in the community as much as other designers, but really this is a fantastic fragrance and in my opinion the best of the line by far. So this one is my number one 10 out of 10 designer, but they're all 10s, so I guess it's impossible to really rank them on that note. But guys, that's it for this list. So this is a tag video. I'm going to tag Chris from Casual Fragrances. Hope he does the video. It is a fun yet challenging video to do. And guys, that's it for this one. Leave a comment down below. What are your favorite designer fragrances, your 10 out of 10 designer fragrances? And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.